because he didn't bring up the whole multicolored. He didn't bring up transgender Saruman versus white Saruman the White.
Wait, what did you just say?
Nothing.
What
I said
that?
nothing.
Trans wizard?
Hour grows late, and Gandalf the Grey rides to Isengard. So the Ring of Power has been found.
All these long years, it was in the Shire. Under my very nose.
Your love of the Halfling's leaf has clearly slowed your mind. Sauron has regained much of his former strength.
His gaze pierces cloud and shadow, earth and flesh.
Yes, Sauron.
A Palantir is a dangerous tool, Saruman. They are not all accounted for, the lost seeing stones.
The Nine have left Minas Morgul.
They've reached the Shire.
They will find the ring. And kill the one who carries it.
Okay. A lot of differences there. I cut that together to happen a little bit faster and to avoid the YouTube algorithm. It amazed me actually going through this how many changes there are. There are a lot of changes here that Peter Jackson made, and it's pretty dramatic. So number one, of course, is, as I said, we are calling this Orthanc in real time, meaning this happens not as a flashback in the Council of Elrond. It happens through the story, so we know why Gandalf isn't meeting up with Frodo and Bree, which I bet I'd love to hear Peter Jackson's reasoning for that. Like, if he struggled with that decision at all, to see like, is it better to make the audience question what's going on? But then that means Gandalf's not in the story for like 30 or 40 minutes. It probably would have been tough. Anyway, so we don't know in the books what's happened to Gandalf. Here we know right away, right? He's been captured. And then we see like a big difference in the information that's conveyed and who conveys it, and things that they drop. So number one, let's go through a few of these here first. So number one, I think is, well, let's say what they added is the smoking reference.
Right, because you got to have, if you want to do Middle Earth right, you got to have your chronic references, right? Just throw them in there. Just a bunch of imply that Gandalf's on the ganja.
Yeah. So that's their sense of humor that they added. I think, though, that the one thing they dropped was Tolkien's sense of humor, and that's when Saruman doesn't call himself Saruman the White, but Saruman of Many Colors. And so I'll read this line where Gandalf says, "I looked then and saw that his robes, which had seemed white, were not so, but were woven of all colors. And if he moved, they shimmered and changed hue so that the eye was bewildered. I liked white better," I said. I'm like, oh, that line, I liked white better. I thought that's a great line of humor. So they just completely dropped that. So in the whole, and this means that in the entire film, the trilogy, we don't get, Saruman's still Saruman the White, not Saruman of Many Colors. Yeah, so they got rid of that.
Yep. It's fascinating to me. Like, why did they drop the Saruman, the Many Colors? I think I know, actually. I think I can take hazard a guess, and that is that we don't know of him as Saruman the White before this point. It isn't as if we've referenced him, and so that there can be a change. Whereas in the books, it is mentioned on a number of occasions, actually, when Gandalf's talking, that he was Saruman the White. And he makes a point in his speeches in the book, in the Council of Elrond, when he's recounting what happened, to talk about each wizard's color when he says their name. So he says, there's Saruman sneering about Gandalf the Grey, and Radagast the Brown, and of course, as you didn't mention this, but Radagast completely out.
Oh yeah, and we talked about that in a previous change too. But yeah, right. There's no Radagast is the one that tells Gandalf the Nine have come to the Shire, and that's another change.
There's a lot of little details they left out. So they left out the fact that the doors are shut behind Gandalf as he enters the Ring of Isengard, and that fear enters him at that point. Gandalf even says so. They left out the fact that Saruman is waiting for him on the steps. Instead, they have them doing this pleasant walk together in the woods, in the orchards or something.
Yeah.
So they have differences. And of course, as you mentioned, the Palantir.
Yeah. That was a big change. Not only the Palantir, but the Eye of Sauron in the Palantir, which is even more.
Gandalf isn't aware, or at least it's pretty likely he seems unaware that Saruman had a Palantir, given his reaction in the book when Pippin comes carrying it back up the steps in the Two Towers.
That's right.
And Gandalf covers it up, and then later on Gandalf says, we would have searched Isengard if we had and found few treasures as valuable as what Grima threw at us. And so, it's pretty clear that Gandalf wasn't aware of the Palantir beforehand. So this is a complete ad.
Yeah,
Peter Jackson.
I will say the Palantir looks awesome. I always love the look of the Palantir.
It's fantastic.
Like the way that it just moves. There's a little bit of that cloudy movement inside of it, and
it's a dark stone, which is Tolkien accurate. He talks about it as a dark stone.
Yeah. And then the other thing that I think is more egregious in the sense is that they strip Saruman of his power in this. Well, we'll get into the wizard duel in the next change, but the power of his words. And so how Saruman's trying to convince Gandalf, and I'm not going to read everything in there. You can go to the Council of Elrond and read that. But he has paragraphs where he's trying to convince Gandalf to join him so that they will eventually get the One Ring, supersede Sauron, and dominate Middle-earth themselves. And Gandalf's response after this whole long diatribe by Saruman is, I have heard speeches of this kind before, but only in the mouths of emissaries sent from Mordor to deceive the ignorant. I cannot think that you brought me so far only to weary my ears. And so even here, we see that Saruman's power, which is of his words, of his convincing people, that's what he did to Theoden, right? That's how he didn't like cast a magic spell. At least it's not as dramatic as Jackson makes it in the books, with long fingernails, long scraggly hair, and cloudy eyes. But he has a power over Theoden, and it's the power of his words, and that's what Saruman is doing here with Gandalf too. He's trying to sway him with the power of his words, but Gandalf again has that same response that he has later, essentially in the Two Towers, of like it's not going to work on me.
Right. Now what's interesting to me about that, Jonathan, is that it took me a few read-throughs before I realized that when I was younger, the difference between the two, because if you read the part about when Gandalf tells what happened in Saruman's speech, he doesn't mention the power of Saruman's voice or anything like that. He just relays what Saruman says, and then he relays his own response, which is dismissive of what Saruman says. And so I agree with you that would have been very interesting, because Saruman would have been exerting his power, trying to convince Gandalf with his voice. Totally would have been the case, just like he tries again with Theoden and the others after the Battle of Helm's Deep. But Tolkien does not make that clear in the books at the Council of Elrond that Saruman has that power. He doesn't talk about it.
No, you're right. He doesn't. You're right. That's true. It's kind of a small hint.
So, but my favorite line from that was left out, which I thought was unfortunate, because the delivery, I'm imagining the delivery by Christopher Lee of this line and Ian McKellen of these lines, it would be fantastic. So you had said, I like white better. I said, that's Gandalf speaking. White, he sneered, it serves as a beginning. White cloth may be dyed, the white page can be overwritten, and white light can be broken. In which case, it is no longer white, said I, and he that breaks a thing to find out what it is has left the path of wisdom. So I love that line. He who breaks a thing to find out what it is has left the path of wisdom. And also another of those humorous points, like Gandalf has kind of hobbitry, like he's hanging around hobbits a lot, not smoking their weed because they don't have that kind of weed, but he hangs around hobbits and he gets the hobbit sense of humor. And he says, when he says, I like white better, and also when he says, in which case it is no longer white, these are, I believe, examples of this kind of simple humor, which is meant to sort of take down arrogant statements, which is I think Gandalf's role here. So anyway, lots of differences.
Lots of minor. We could have gone through each one separately, but decided
Yep.
Nah. Did Peter Jackson put that line in? I'm trying to remember that he that breaks the thing has left the path of wisdom. Was that in the
I
films?
didn't think so.
I don't think so.
Maybe
Because I always think to the great lines where he repurposes them in other places in the films. So whenever we come across one like that, I'm like, but didn't he try to use that? Did he use that somewhere? Was that used somewhere? I don't remember right now.
we could look it up because no doubt there are people yelling at us on the internet right now as they listen to this.
Guys, we're more fans of the books than the movies, so we know the books better.
But
than the movies.
I'm sure he didn't say it in that part, like in
No.
that place. He didn't say it because he didn't bring up the whole multicolored. He didn't bring up transgender Saruman versus white Saruman the White. So,
wait, what did you just say?
Nothing.
What
I
was
said
that?
nothing.
Trans wizard? What was that?
That's right. Trans wizard.
All right. Okay. Well, that brings us.
Maybe Saruman of the many colors would have been too much on the nose for the 21st century.
It was early enough in the 21st century. I don't think people would have thought too much of it. Now, if it would have been Rainbow Sauron, they would have like had stripes down his cloak with multiple. Anyway,
That's right.
we won't get into that. Okay.
Ian McKellen could have played that part pretty well, from what I hear.
Oh my goodness, that we will bring up in our extended edition to the podcast. That go to theonering.com/member to become a member and hear that our discussion about Saruman of many colors as portrayed by Gandalf.
Ian McKellen. Yep.
Oh yeah.
All right. Is it time to answer our questions?
As portrayed by Magneto. Okay. Anyway. All right. We're gonna go to our 3 questions. Number 1, is it lore friendly? This point of Orthanc in real time with all those other little changes too. We're including them all in this one thing. Is it lore friendly? Does it change the lore? This one's hard.
So it changes a bunch of specifics that we mentioned, small things.
Yeah.
The biggest loss that it gives is the loss of the white versus the many colors. The fact that Saruman, also there was a cool line we didn't mention where Gandalf notices that Saruman has his own ring now. Obviously, it's not important enough to be on the level of the elven rings or the One Ring. But it's clearly also going to be a magical ring because Saruman is a crafter. He is the chosen of Aule, of the Valar, and so he has long been concerned with such things. So there were cool details that were left out. The question is, Ganja aside, do the other comments and do the other ways of portraying what happened in that first conversation, and the fact that they had it happen in real time versus being relayed as part of the council, is that lore friendly? You want to go first, or should I?
I can go first.
Okay.
I think the most egregious thing it does is it changes slightly. Well, it changes the characters just enough to make it annoying to me, but does it make it lore unfriendly? No, I'm going to say no on this one.
Is it lore friendly? No.
Oh, sorry. Is it lore friendly? Yes, it does not change the lore. See, it's been like 3 months since we've done this. I'm trying to get back to the right question here.
You confused me. I was like, wait a minute. Which am I? What am I answering? What am I answering?
Yeah, it's lore friendly. I don't think it goes far enough to actually change what Tolkien intended with the character.
And I agree with you on that. I think it makes some changes, but I think overall the portrayal of that meeting between the two is on target from a lore friendliness perspective. And that, how Saruman is welcoming him in and trying to convince him to switch sides, and Gandalf refuses, and the references to the hobbits and Saruman's dismissiveness and sneering and arrogance. This is all accurate. I think this is lore. It's lore friendly. It isn't the best version of what they could have done, but it's lore friendly.
Yeah. Okay. Next one. Does the change make for better cinema? Does the change make for better cinema? Michael, you go first on this one.
Absolutely, it does. Because in cinema, you need sequential, it would have had far less power to have Gandalf tell the Council of Elrond and have it be a flashback. You would have broken up the council scene, which was full of all this tension between the people of the council. And so telling, and also we have Elrond already telling tales of the past. And so to have Gandalf do it as well, I think it makes more sense here. Also, one of the things that we have the tension over is Gandalf's being missing in the
in the books.
books, but that's mostly drawn out by the 6 chapters that Jackson cut out anyway. So you're not actually losing that much
That's a good
with
point.
regard to that tension.
That's funny.
When in the movies. So, but anyway, in general, is it better for him to show it as it's happening, sort of the cut back and forth between characters, action? I think it is better cinema. Yes.
So I'm struggling a little bit here simply because, one, I think it's better the Orthanc in real time, like in moving it into the plot of the story rather than a flashback, is the right thing to do. You can't do a ton of flashbacks unless I think it happens before the film actually started. I think that's the time when you use flashbacks. But some of those changes I don't find particularly like lore friendly, in the sense that Saruman is the one who knew that the 9 were coming into the Shire. He knew already because they had already come to him, right? They'd already visited him. Whereas in the film, it's Saruman. Sorry. It's Radagast that tells Gandalf in the books, and in the film it's Saruman that tells him that they're in the Shire in there already. So I don't like the little things like that, but I guess I will say yes, because overall the change makes for better.
You should just go no. Just go no. Just
no.
I know you don't think
it. Can't.
Well, I guess the problem with this kind of a change is this is actually like 8 or 9 little changes wrapped up into one change, and so some of them it makes for better cinema. And like, for example, telling it in real time as it happens, I like that.
Agreed.
And since that's the title, that's why I went with that, with the yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, all right.
Well, and because I don't think it is lore unfriendly, the changes they made, I'm not going to be so curmudgeonly, so negative that I'll say no on here. I'll stick with the yes. All right. Next question is how much? What were we going to say?
Go ahead.
How much do you like the change? How much do you like the change?
You first.
So a scale 1 to 5, so 3 is smack dab in the middle. I will say that it is the right decision to make this happen in the middle of the story. So I'm going to give it a 3.7. I think it was the right change, and it definitely hews closer to you. Like if they would have kept it that way, we would have been all like, but Gandalf was gone for a while, and why? Like it's weird to hear the whole flashback here in this. And when you listen to the flashback in a book, I think it makes it more interesting because you've experienced everything else and you've been in those characters for so long. Whereas here, you have to keep the story moving forward in a very brief way. And if you just sit for about 10 minutes talking about a flashback, that is a little odd in a film. So 3.7.
Yeah. 3.5.
Wow.
It's all right. This is one of those cases where I think it did make for somewhat better cinema because of the nature of it, and it was lore friendly. But I still feel that there was a lot missing that they could have they could have included, even by telling Orthanc in real time. They could have also included some of the other details. So I'm not going to give it a very high mark in that regard.
So you're also judging it on what it left out, not just on.
I am. It's what they could have done, since we're judging a whole bucket of changes, little changes in this one thing.
Yeah.
I'm gonna include what they could have done in my assessment of how much I liked or didn't like the change.
Yeah, I could have gone 3.5. I could have gone 2.5, honestly, if I really wanted to. But because I'm judging it more based on the real time issue, like we talked about, then I'll give it a little bit higher marks.
Because it's the Easter season, Jonathan is being more positive now.